5 years ago, I carved out my own slice of independence, just beyond the borders of a so-called upscale neighborhood. The kind of place where a homeowners association strutted around like it ran a kingdom. My name's Ethan Caldwell, and I made damn sure when I bought my lot, their rules didn't follow me home. Everything in my paperwork, the deed, the boundary map, the sale agreement, made it crystal clear. Their grip didn't extend to me. I built a clean, modern house, nothing extravagant but exactly what I wanted. The backyard pool was my retreat. Sharp design, peaceful water, my dog keeping me company, sometimes a floating speaker humming soft tunes. No dues, no rulebook, no angry letters because my shrubs weren't HOA approved. I worked from home, drank cold beer beside the pool, and felt like I'd hacked the system. Meanwhile, the community's prized possession, their packed, rowdy pool, sat a few blocks down. It was a chaotic mess of screeching kids, exasperated parents, and constant jostling for lounge chairs. I walked by it with my dog sometimes, never tempted to step inside. Why would I? I had my own oasis, and their circus had nothing to do with me. What I didn't realize was that the land beneath their beloved pool wasn't owned by the HOA at all. It was leased, an easily overlooked detail in the original developer's fine print. The same developer who had sold me my plot. Back then, I barely noticed that clause. I wouldn't know how much power it held until everything went sideways. The trouble began when a new HOA president took over. Let's call her Miranda Hayes. She showed up like a sheriff in a Western movie, full of fire and obsessed with order. Her newsletters read like manifestos, bold fonts, long lists of rules, passive-aggressive warnings. She stalked the neighborhood with a camera, obsessing over paint shades, mailbox placement, and hedge heights. I wasn't even on her mailing list, but I picked up one of her memos near the community pool out of curiosity. It was hilarious until it wasn't. One afternoon, I caught her standing near my backyard fence, her tiny dog yapping while she aimed her phone at my pool. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying not to sound hostile. "Just looking," she snapped, then turned and walked off without explanation. I should have said more, told her to delete the photos. Instead, I let it slide. That was my mistake. That moment was the first spark in a fire I didn't know was coming. A week later, an envelope arrived. Heavy paper, gold-embossed logo. Looked more like a royal decree than a letter. It wasn't a friendly neighborhood update or party invitation. It was a formal accusation that my pool violated community standards, was constructed without proper approval, and had to be drained immediately. The letter warned of daily fines and even mentioned possible eviction. They included photos, taken from outside my fence. At first, I thought it had to be a joke. Eviction? Over a pool? On land I legally owned and that wasn't under their control? I reread the letter 3 times, then pulled out all my documents again. Every line proved I wasn't part of their association. I figured it was a mix-up, that Miranda hadn't checked my boundary info. So I called their office asking to clear things up. They shut me down immediately, said I'd have to raise my concerns at the next HOA meeting. Fine. I loaded up everything, my title, deed, exemption letters, you name it, and showed up at their little town hall. The meeting room smelled like burnt coffee and frustration. A handful of elderly residents sat quietly. Others looked like they'd been dragged there. Miranda sat up front in a blazer like she was leading a courtroom. When it was my turn, I calmly presented my case. "My lot isn't included in your HOA," I said, placing my documents on the table. "This letter was sent in error." Miranda barely glanced at the papers. "Your pool is visible to community residents," she said coldly. "It disrupts our visual harmony. You'll need to remove it or face consequences." I stood my ground. "That's not happening. I haven't violated any laws. Your rules don't apply to my property." She leaned forward, voice low but sharp. "Don't make us turn you into an example." I left with a warning. Any more notices, any more threats, and I'd take legal action. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. More letters arrived, harsher this time. One screamed, "Final warning," in red across the top. Another claimed I owed hundreds per day in fines. Then came the phone calls. Anonymous voices warning me to give in, to think about my future, then hanging up. It was unsettling. But it got worse. Miranda contacted my mortgage company, spreading lies about code violations and liens. My lender called me, confused and concerned. I forwarded them all the relevant documents, and they shut her down. The rep even said she was disgusted by what the HOA was doing. But that's when I realized this wasn't about facts. It was about power. Miranda didn't care what was true. She wanted control, and I had become her obsession. I didn't just want to fight back anymore. I wanted her to regret ever starting this. 5 summers back, I bought a peaceful patch of land at the edge of a polished suburban enclave, intentionally choosing a spot just beyond the grasp of their overreaching homeowners association. My documents were airtight, no ties to their rules, no dues, no interference. I built a clean, modern home with a quiet pool in the back, my private retreat. For a while, everything was calm, until Miranda came along. She had climbed the ranks of the HOA board and made it her mission to make my life miserable. Fines for unapproved landscaping, warnings about trash bins placed out too early, even letters about paint colors, all completely baseless. But I didn't react. Not publicly. Instead, I bided my time, and that's when I remembered something odd someone once said at a barbecue. That the community pool didn't sit on HOA land, it was leased. One trip to the county records office confirmed it. The property was still owned by the original developer, and the HOA's lease would expire in less than a year. I reached out to the developer, Tom, a retired man who was, frankly, done with the HOA's nonsense. Over lunch, I laid everything out. Tom remembered their past attempts to renegotiate the lease at laughably low offers. When I asked if he'd ever consider selling the land instead of leasing it, he didn't even hesitate. For the right offer, yes. From that point, my strategy changed. While Miranda kept sending threats and citations, I quietly began negotiations to buy the land beneath their community's favorite gathering spot. I didn't tell a soul. I ignored every letter, every voicemail. The silence drove her wild. She even started lurking near my fence, snapping photos of my backyard like she was building a legal case. I always waved. Tom and I closed the deal quickly. He was eager to be free of the HOA, and my lawyer made sure the transfer was clean and bulletproof. We timed the sale to finalize the same day the existing lease ended. As far as the HOA was concerned, the transition was invisible until it wasn't. On a calm Tuesday, the lease expired. Hours later, I became the legal owner. My attorney delivered a formal termination letter to the HOA revoking their access to the pool, and by the end of the day, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Board members called in a frenzy, claiming I'd been conned, insisting they owned the land. I let them rant into voicemails. That same evening, I hired a construction crew to install a 6-foot privacy fence around the pool. Locked gate. No trespassing signs. Done. Miranda showed up, yelling at the gate, demanding to see the property manager. I stepped out casually and told her, "That's me." She barked about disrupting community harmony. I simply said, "You let the lease expire. I bought the land. You're welcome to check the public records." When she threatened legal action, I smiled. My lawyer's already waiting. The aftermath was absolute chaos. At the next HOA meeting, over 70 residents showed up, shouting, waving pool bills, demanding answers. Miranda tried to spin it as if I'd tricked them, but the facts were solid. They missed their chance. They ignored renewal deadlines. They let their golden goose slip away. Within weeks, board members resigned, Miranda vanished, and the community's trust evaporated. I didn't just fence the pool, I upgraded it. New tiles, sleek furniture, shade sails, ambient lighting. We threw a private relaunch party, music blasting, drinks floating in pool trays. A few residents asked if they could pay to use it, but I turned them down. Not out of spite, I just wasn't interested in the liability and hassle of managing a public pool. 6 months later, the HOA sent me a friendly proposal to lease the land back, calling it mutually beneficial. I shredded the letter without reading past the first paragraph. They had countless opportunities to avoid this. I didn't set out to destroy anything, But I also wasn't going to be pushed around in a place I deliberately chose to live free. Now their favorite amenity was under my lock and key. And yet, here I am with two pools. The one in my backyard sits unused now. I'm toying with the idea of draining it, maybe turning it into a garden. A final, ironic twist, giving them what they originally wanted, no pool. But would it still sting, with Miranda long gone and the damage already done? I know some residents didn't deserve to lose the pool. Many moved here because of it. Families, kids, people just trying to live peacefully like me. But when their leadership picked a fight they couldn't win, I responded in kind. Maybe I went too far. Maybe I didn't. But one thing's certain, they'll think twice before messing with the wrong neighbor again.